Sunny Hostin never stops ripping on the cops.
As a mother of black children, I know that black boys are not given the presumption of innocence and the presumption of...
Sunny Hostin walked onto The View acting like she owned the moral high ground. She delivered a dramatic tale about her all-white neighborhood and claimed she had to introduce her son to the local police so they wouldn't harass him while he trained for the Junior Olympics. The audience applauded. Her co-hosts nodded like sages. Social media celebrated her courage. Then Tyrus and Greg Gutfeld saw the clip. What came next wasn't a rebuttal. It was a demolition. Tyrus went in hard. He called the whole thing exactly what it looked like. A hoax, a performance, a neatly packaged victimhood drop meant to score political points. And the internet exploded. Tonight, I'm breaking down what Sunny said, why her story fell apart under the slightest scrutiny, and how Tyrus exposed a much bigger problem. Elite liberals pretending to be oppressed while living in million-dollar suburbs. The worst part? She doubled down, and her defenders somehow made it even worse. Sunny Hostin, co-host of The View and former federal prosecutor, has built her brand on calling out racism, demanding accountability, and lecturing America about its moral failures. Fair enough, until the stories she tells stop adding up. Until the details point to something very different. Until the narrative looks less like lived injustice and more like privilege dressed up as persecution. The segment that ignited everything aired during a discussion about the Netflix documentary The Perfect Neighbor, which covers the tragic 2023 killing of
just a group of cops, just a little herd of policemen just walk around a white neighborhood looking for people like me.
Jake Owens. And that's when Sunny reached for an anecdote that sounded emotional, powerful, and increasingly unbelievable that a black mother was shot by her white neighbor in Florida after confronting her for allegedly harassing Owens's children with racial slurs and throwing objects. A heavy subject. A real injustice. The kind of story that deserves careful, serious discussion. But instead of staying on that seriousness, Hostin pivoted to herself. She used the moment to tell her own story. She said, quote, "As a mother of black children, I know that black boys are not given the presumption of innocence and the presumption of youth. A valid concern many black parents share." Then came the part that raised eyebrows. She added, "I have had to go to my local police department because I knew my son would be training for the Junior Olympics, running around an all-white neighborhood. And I brought him to the police saying, he belongs to me. This is my son. Do not harass him." Let that sit for a moment. She claimed she proactively took her son to the police station, introduced him, and warned officers not to target him. The implication was loud and clear. Her white neighbors and the local cops were so racist, so primed to assume criminality, that she had to...
Mother of black children, I know that black boys are not given the presumption of innocence and the presumption of youth. I have had to be in the position where I have gone to my local police department because I know my son is going to be training for the Junior Olympics, running around the neighborhood in an all-white neighborhood, and I have brought him to the police and said, he belongs to me, this is my son, do not harass him, do not stop him.
To preemptively protect her son from a threat that hadn't happened. The audience loved it. Social media hailed her bravery. But then people started asking questions. First, did any of this actually happen? Because Hostin never said the police had harassed her son. Not once. She only implied it might happen, yet packaged the anecdote as if she had lived through a hostile environment waiting to pounce on her child. She never said her neighbors had called the cops on him. She never gave a single example of him being stopped, questioned, or threatened. The entire story was preventative. She assumed something might happen, so she acted. That's not evidence of racism. That's evidence of assumption. Second, where does she live? Turns out Sunny Hostin lives in a very wealthy community. Serious luxury. The kind of neighborhood where residents know each other. Crime is nearly non-existent, and a teen athlete training for the Junior Olympics wouldn't raise suspicion. He'd probably get a round of applause. The idea that her son, clearly an athlete, would be mistaken for a criminal in broad daylight in one of the safest areas in the region is statistically absurd. Third, what was she really doing? That's where Gutfeld and Tyrus stepped in. They didn't just roll their eyes. They broke the narrative down piece by piece. Greg Gutfeld opened by calling it a hoax. Not a stretch. Not an exaggeration. A hoax. He argued that Hust fabricated a narrative of oppression where none existed, painting her safe, affluent neighborhood as some hotbed of racial profiling. And he pointed out the obvious. If you can afford to live in an elite suburb and your son is training for the Junior Olympics, you're not oppressed, you're privileged. Pretending otherwise insults people who actually face discrimination. Then Tyrus took over, and that's when things escalated. Tyrus, who is black, didn't just question Hust's story. He called out the deeper dishonesty.
Is feeling guilty about being a successful black lady who lives with white people, so she has to play.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Successful slave-owning black woman. Get it right.
Yeah.
Behind it. He said people like Hust use race as both a shield from criticism and a weapon against anyone who pushes back. Her story, he argued, wasn't about protecting her son. It was about performing victimhood for an audience that rewards it. He accused her of lying not because an event didn't occur, but because the framing was intentionally misleading. And he didn't stop there. Tyrus said Hust's tactic hurts real victims of racism, people who deal with actual danger, not theoretical scenarios in gated communities. That people in that area, people who likely know every family on the block, would profile her son is ridiculous. And if she truly believed they would, why live there? Why not move somewhere she trusts? The question lingered because the answer exposes the truth. Hust doesn't actually believe her neighborhood is racist. She simply needed a story that fit the narrative, and The View, always eager to reward televised victimhood, gave her the stage to deliver it unchallenged. The online response split instantly. Hust's defenders accused Gutfeld and Tyrus of downplaying the real fears black parents face. They argued that even if nothing happened to her son, her concerns were valid because racism exists. Some even accused Tyrus of betraying his community for agreeing with conservatives. But here's the flaw in that defense. It blends legitimate concerns with manufactured victimhood. Yes, black boys often face more scrutiny. Yes, profiling is real. Yes, parents have every right to worry. But none of that justifies inventing a scenario, presenting it as lived experience, and using it to smear an entire community without a shred of evidence. And that's exactly what critics hammered Host for. They know